The Driftwood has put on this event. They've rented the hall and they've made all the arrangements. And so we are indebted to them for doing that and for allowing us to meet all our candidates. We're also extremely indebted to the candidates for coming over here, those that don't live here, to spend the afternoon with us. We're not a big part of the riding, but we think we're an important one, and it's nice to see that they do too. We really appreciate your presence. There's at least three stages to this debate. The first stage is when each candidate gets a chance to make an opening statement of 3 minutes. We have a young lady, Chloe Schuberg, in the front row, who is holding a big clock, and she's pointing it towards the stage so that people can see how long they've got. We're going to have to be quite strict about the timing, not just with the candidates, but with you when it comes to your asking questions, because there's a lot of people here and we've only got 2.5 hours to do everything. So the first stage is we'll ask each candidate to make a statement. They have 3 minutes to do it, and when they've all finished, they will get 1 more minute to respond to what they have heard from the other candidates. At that point, we will open it up to questions from the floor, and I'll go into more detail about that when it happens. But for now, we've drawn for speaking order, and the first person to make his 3-minute statement is Andrew Lewis. Andrew Lewis is the candidate for the Green Party. He's 46 years old. He's lived on Salt Springs since '92. Married to Susan and has 2 children at the middle school. He runs his own landscaping and contracting business. He has most recently been involved in our community, helping on affordable housing issues and starting a broad community discussion on sustainability and the natural step. Andrew has run 3 times for the Greens and retains the record for the most number of votes for both provincial and federal Green parties. I'd like you to welcome Andrew Lewis.
Thank you very much. Well, it's great to be back home on Salt Spring, even if it's just for a few hours. This is a frenetic campaign, and the Green Party has so much momentum. We're really excited in our Green Party campaign here in Sanis Gulf Islands. We truly believe we're on the cusp of electing our first Green MP for Canada. Most of you know me. I won't go into too many more details about myself. David covered most of the facts that you need to know. I want to get straight to the point. Actually, 3 points. One is leadership, the other is economy, and the other one is accountability. We have a leadership deficit in this country. We have so many issues confronting and challenging Canada. Important, serious issues like climate change and the issues that are connected to that, such as rising energy prices, such as food shortages. We saw the first glimpse of that in the spring. Our crumbling infrastructure in our communities. This is symbolic of a failure of leadership over the last few years. I'm proud to be a Green yet again. I believe that our Vision Green is a comprehensive, integrated platform that provides the leadership we need for Canada in the 21st century. On the economy, we're on the brink of a recession. From June to September of this year, the Conservatives spent $8.8 billion in pre-election spending on the edge of a recession. We have hollowing out of a manufacturing sector in this country. And as I said before, we have crumbling infrastructure in our communities. Our economy is susceptible to what's happening down south. We have deep integration policies that connects us to the US in ways that could be very damaging for this country. We need to invest in our communities. We need to start investing in education. We need to start investing in Canada again. And finally, on accountability, the Reform Party had a policy that was very clear, that your MP is responsible to your constituents, not to the party whip. Mr. Lunn is now responsible to the party whip. This is not good enough. As your elected MP, I will be a public servant, listening and responding to your values and your needs, and I will not respond to any kind of party whip. So please support me in this election. This is a critical election, and we have an opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you in particular for completing it in less than 3 minutes. I really appreciate that. I should mention to the others, I think you can see the clock going now. Would you like me to tell you when you've got 30 seconds left, or should I just shut up until it's over? I'll shut up until it's over. 30 seconds? Okay. All right. The second up is Bryony Penn. Bryony, I think you all know very well as a local environmental activist and somebody who's been very involved in community on Salisbury for a long time. There's a number of things that I don't know about her, and so I can't tell you because she hasn't actually given me a piece of paper to so she'll have to count on her, rely on her 3 minutes to tell you. Brian.
Well, what a great pleasure to be here, and thanks to the Driftwood for holding this all candidates debate. Good on Salt Spring that this is the best attended, and I think it's going to be probably one of the best all candidates debate in the entire riding, because one thing that Salt Spring Islanders love, know, and have taught me is that open debate and debate with great openness to all differences of opinion is very welcome. So thank you to the Driftwood, who's also, I might add, the newspaper that publishes the most letters to the editor, I think, in the entire nation. So, and I mention that because when Stéphane Dion asked me to run for the Liberal Party, he said, Bryony, no one is going to tell you from Ottawa what to do. And he knew that I had that reputation. He said, what I want you to do is bring the best of Salt Spring to Ottawa. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to create businesses that don't divide the economy and the environment. And we're going to create businesses that rock even in the international scene. And I'm going to bring examples like the Salt Spring Coffee Company. We are people that get it about social networks, environmental responsibility, and making a good business. So that's the first thing. Salt Spring Islanders, what else have we pioneered, and what does the Liberal Party want? We want to solve homelessness. So what have we done on Salt Spring? We have incredible individuals that know how to work in partnership with all different levels of government, and the federal government wants to get in on that partnership more and more. And they're looking to Salt Spring as the pilot and the model for the rest of Canada. What does Salt Spring do? We cherish our artists, our musicians, our writers. We don't censor them. We don't muzzle them. We have free, open expression. And Mr. Dion has said, we want to bring the party back into party. And Salt Spring Islanders are great at that. So what else does Salt Spring do that Mr. Dion wants to see in Ottawa? We support our local farmers. We support local markets. We eat local food as much as we can, and we're going to try everything we can do to support those farmers. And so is he. All right. Is that my time?
No, 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds. Okay, quickly, I'll whip through this thing. You know me, I talk too much. So we're going to protect our watersheds. We're going to safeguard our endangered species. We're going to not have oil tankers cruising up and down our incredible...
Thank you. Our next speaker. Our Our next speaker is Gary Lunn. Gary Lunn has been MP for Senator and Gulf Islands for 11 years. He is currently the Minister of Natural Resources and the Interior, and I'd like to welcome him here this afternoon. Gary.
Thank you, David. I'd also like to thank the Director for having this all candidates meeting. I think it's very, very important. This is an incredibly important election, as all of you know. And I believe, ultimately, it's going to boil down to on October the 14th, when you mark your X, it's going to come down to leadership. And that leadership is going to be incredibly important. Who's best to lead this country with uncertain economic times? And you have two very stark, different choices. The choice of the Prime Minister, who has delivered on everything he said he's going to do. He's delivered $200 billion in tax relief to Canadians right across the country. He's cut the GST from 7% to 5%. We put more money back in the pockets of seniors. He's just announced that he'll raise the exemption from $12,000 for seniors, what they can earn when he took office, will be over $17,000, is what we've committed to. These are real promises that he has delivered on in the past. Obviously, the environment is also going to be equally important. We have delivered on the environment. We're investing heavily in renewable energy. We've put more clean energy on the grid than any other previous government. We are investing in technology, which is helping us clean up our conventional energy. And we're investing heavily in energy efficiency. You contrast that with the other choice for government, that of Mr. Dion and all of his candidates, who are running on a massive carbon tax. A carbon tax that's fundamentally designed to make energy less affordable. We don't agree you should just allow a tax to allow people to pay for their pollution. We're actually taking concrete results to actually reduce greenhouse emissions, to take those emissions out of the atmosphere. And we're very proud of our record. Our record on cleaning up the environment. We've announced that we're expanding the Hanley National Park by 5 to 6 times. I announced just recently that we're doubling the Gulf Islands National Park Acquisition Fund. These are real results that we've been able to deliver. We've created the largest freshwater marine protected area in the world in Lake Superior. You contrast that with what Mr. Dion did or didn't do when he was the Minister of Environment. After 13 years, they signed international agreements, they signed on to targets, and they didn't deliver. They didn't get the job done. When we took office, greenhouse gases were up 35%.
30 seconds, Gary.
35%. That's not a record to be proud of. Mr. Dion, he was part of that government for 13 years. And you all know, I remember coming to these old candidates meetings, what you had to say about the Liberal Party of Canada and Mr. Dion when he was there. So I'm asking for your support so we can continue the work we're doing, continue a steady hand to continue to ensure our economy remains strong, and that we continue to make progress in the environment. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Our last speaker is Jeremy Arney of the Canadian Action Party. Jeremy is passionate about the future of Canada as a sovereign nation. He has 3 children and 5 grandchildren. He has travelled extensively through Canada and the US driving semis. A working person himself, Jeremy Arney believes that Canadians have been misled by the major parties and left without a voice in Ottawa. Jeremy is that voice. Jeremy, please.
Thank you very much for the welcome. It's great to be back in Salt Spring. I think this is my 3rd trip since the election was called. I haven't been here that often for who knows, who cares. All right, okay, actually. So, what's this about the sovereignty and security of our country that I'm concerned about? There is an elephant in our room, ladies and gentlemen. It's called the SPP, otherwise known as the Security and Prosperity Partnership, which is a total amalgamation of Mexico, United States, and Canada into one group called the North American Union. And for those of you who doubt this is actually happening, you think I'm an extremist, I'm out to lunch, $137 million in the last federal budget was allotted for that very purpose. This is not a mystical, mythical elephant in the room. It's real. It's with us. It's due to happen in 2009, leading into NAU in 2010. I have 3 children, 5 grandchildren. I want them to be Canadian. I do not want them to be subservient, maybe, to Washington, D.C. I want them to be proud, strong, free Canadians with free speech, free rights, and a government that responds to them. Economy? What do we not know about the economy? Let me just say this. For the last 100 years, maybe, we've been, in essence, a two-party system. And those two parties have been going backwards and forwards like yo-yos. And is anybody really happy with what the ordinary person has? Well, sure, there's some who are very wealthy. Some have everything they want. But what about people like me, like you, who work for a living? Are you able to sit back and relax at night and say, my future is secure? My job is secure? If you are, then go along with these two parties here on my right, who have in essence taken this country right down the you-know-what. 1974, what was our deficit? Our federal deficit, 88 million. What is it now? 600 plus million. Is that what you want to leave for your children and grandchildren? And the last point I want to make, Andrew's touched on it already. Who is going to be your voice to the House of Parliament in Ottawa? Is it going to be somebody who's going to obey, again, a party whip? Or is it going to be somebody who's going to go back there and say, you know what, party whip? Let's face it, my party isn't big enough to have a party whip, but that's all right. Somebody who will say, never mind. My people on Salt Spring Island, my people in Victoria, my people in Saanich do not want this. Therefore, my vote is no. On the other hand, it may be something that they're trying to stop that you want. Let's be positive about this. There are things that you want that someone doesn't want to give them to you. Who is going to be the one to say, I demand from my people back in BC, in Salt Spring Island, in Saanich and the Gulf Islands, this is what we have to have.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll go in the same order again. Each candidate gets a minute to respond to what they've heard or make a different statement. Andrew.
Just very briefly, I really am looking forward to the questions here. I have very little to respond to my fellow candidates, other than to point out Gary Lunds seems very proud in the cut to the GST, which every economist in Canada, except Stephen Harper, believes was a ridiculous thing to do.
Mr. Lund seems to think that the carbon tax is a risky economic thing, and I'd like to point out to him that Sweden, when they introduced it in 1991, has now grown their economy by 44% and is the leading economic performer in the world.
What you're hearing very clearly, and they're both just stood up, the Green Party and the Liberal candidate are running on a platform of raising your taxes. We're running on a platform, and I'm glad there's some supporters, but you don't want to vote for me if you actually want your taxes raised, because we actually believe you should cut your taxes. You should control government spending, and you need to be modest. We've been able to put down $40 billion in the debt in 2.5 years, saving $1 billion in interest. You need good fiscal prudence. That's why the Canadian economy is the strongest economy in the G7 right now. Our fundamentals are strong, and it's important that we keep it that way so people can continue to ensure that they can pay their mortgages and we can create new jobs. That's what's important. That's what we're running on, not creating a risky new experimental carbon tax that we believe will put the country in economic ruin. Thank you.
Oh boy. Semantics, semantics, semantics. What's the real problem? Ladies and gentlemen, the elephant is still in the room. Mr. Harper, Mr. Dion, Mr. Layton are not talking about this SPP and North American Union. I urge you to really look at this. Look at it. See where it's taking us. Economy, environment. This is available outside. 16 lakes in Canada. that are due to be turned into tailing ponds, and on the other side you'll see the mines that are involved in that. Freshwater lakes, fish, people living around and depending upon them for their livelihood, being turned into toxic ponds. Is this where we really want to go? I don't think so.
Okay, that's the end of round one. Now, we'll move into audience participation in just a moment, but you may have noticed in the Driftwood on Wednesday that they did invite questions to be emailed in, and a few people have done that. So I'm going to ask give each candidate 30 seconds to respond to this one question, starting with Bryony, working straight down the table in this case. The question is, what is your position on salmon fish farms in BC? 30 seconds.
Okay, the Oceans Act and was a fabulous action plan in the Oceans Act that was set in place in 2005. The Liberals pledged to come back to that action plan, and the end of open net cages is part of that action plan.
This is an area that has cross jurisdiction between the province and the feds. But I think that there is something worth looking at, having a closed pen landlocked system where we contain the fish in tanks on land where the water is filtered before it goes back into the ocean. I absolutely think that's something that's worth exploring. Of course, that salmon farmers will tell you that it's not economical. I'm not convinced of that. Obviously, it's probably less economical, but they're doing it in other parts of the world, so I think it's something that we should at least explore and have a discussion with the province to see if it's viable. Thank you.
How much difference is there between a fish that lives in a fish farm and a chicken that lives in a battery place where it has to produce eggs? No freedom. They have no protection against any kind of disease outside. They get outside, they take their diseases with them, they give diseases to all the fresh fish. They're completely susceptible to the ocean and anything that happens to them. No, let's get rid of them until we can be absolutely sure that nature herself says it's a good idea.
We understand that fish farms are an ecological disaster. We know that it's destroyed wild fisheries in Norway, and it's doing the same here. So the Green Party platform is the federal government needs to work with the province to stop any further open fish nets on the coast and to phase out the existing fish farms.
Okay, here we go with your part of the afternoon, which is the major part of the afternoon. There's two mics in the front. They are controlled from the back, so you can't be cut off if you break the rules. So come down, line up with the mics. We'll take it. We'll alternate between them, just like coming off the ferry. And you will get. Just let me explain the rules. You will get 30 seconds to ask your question. So there's not a lot of time for posturing. You will be cut off after 30 seconds. You may ask your question to an individual, or you may ask it collectively. If you ask it to an individual, that person will have a minute to respond. If you ask it collectively, each candidate will have 30 seconds to respond. So.
My question is to all the candidates. It's about family values. We recently had a gay pride march on Salt Spring, and I want to know where they stand on this. Do they still have the old reform idea that gays should be hiding in the closet, or would they participate next time we have another one, and have they done so before, or were they there and wearing a mask?
Jeremy, do you want to start with this one?
Well, chose me, but that's fine. I'm all in favour of anybody doing anything they want, as long as they don't hurt anybody else. One of my mantras has always been, if it feels good, do it, as long as it doesn't hurt anybody. I didn't know you had a gay parade. If I had known, I would have probably been there. Family values are very important. They're important to you, and you are the people that matter, so whatever you want to do, as long as you don't hurt anybody, go for it.
Let's move around the table this way and then finish with Andrew. So Gary, would you go next?
Yeah, sure. With respect to obviously what people do is their own business. With respect to issues such as same-sex marriage, That's already been through Parliament, it's been passed, it's been supported by the courts. We've made it very clear we have no intentions of ever changing that. And again, so you know, families are made up of many different makeups today, from single parents to heterosexual to same-sex couples, and that's the way it should be. Thank you.
It was Mr. Trudeau that said the government had no place in the bedrooms of Canadians. I have been in several gay pride parades and was proud to be there, and along with all the artists and everyone else. And the other thing I think that's really important is there's still a lot of issues about equality and gender issues, and I've been in consultation with Glossy on many of these issues, and you can be sure that I'm going to take all those issues and I'm going to be an ear for all gay rights and ensuring that we
Well, that Pride Parade that we had a couple of weeks ago was a tremendous experience. It really brought the community together, and it was such a celebration. I think I can't wait for the next one. One of the core values of the Green Party is that guides all our policies and our platform is respect for diversity, and I'm very proud that is one of our values, and it is ingrained in how I try to operate as a person. And as for family values,
All right, so that mic, which we're calling the right-hand mic, just so.
Thank you. This is for all four candidates to respond to, if you would. I'm the mother of a 7-year-old daughter who I am trying to teach nonviolent communication and cooperation to right now. And if I were to turn on the Parliamentary Assembly on the TV and she had a look at the politicians and what they're doing, it would be modeling an embarrassing example of how to behave and cooperate with others. I believe the only way our Canadian Parliament will begin to emulate the values that I'd love to finish this, if you would.
Finish the question, make your question.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm concerned about democracy, a true democracy, and I'm wondering about revamping the electoral system and adopting a single transferable vote, which will force politicians to cooperate. And I'm wondering, well, considering 7 million people in Canada in 2006 did not have their voices heard, do you personally support the STV? And what is your party policy on those things? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give him a minute on this one because it's quite a complex question. Gary, would you start on this and we'll move to Brandon?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I don't disagree with you that the decorum in the House of Commons actually gets to be quite embarrassing at times. From all parts, and it's not acceptable. It was degenerating in the last months in the spring, in May and June, and it's not okay. We need to conduct ourselves in a much higher esteem than that. With respect to electoral reform, something I'm very supportive of, I've actually helped raise money for BCSTV. As you know, we had a provincial referendum just shy of 60%, which was the threshold. I'm not 100% certain that if it's a single transferable ballot or a mixed proportional representation, what is the perfect model? But I do agree what we have now is not working. We're trying to bring in some changes, from reforming the Senate to 8-year terms, to the Prime Minister's committed to appointing elected senators nominated by the provinces. Some things we can do without electoral change, changing the seat distribution so it's greater representation and fairer to the provinces. But we can go on this long, we'll only have a minute. Thank you.
First thing I'd like to do is ask Mr. Lund to ask his Prime Minister to throw out that handbook that instructs MPs on how to disrupt committees. I think we could get a long way on that one. The other thing about parliamentary reform is that we've got to reform it in many levels, but one of the ways that Mr. Dion has identified is getting better representation with women, from women, in Parliament, and he's exceeded all the other parties in getting women candidates to run. Third, proportional representation. I ran on that as part of my platform. I will commit to holding everybody's feet, Mr. Dion's feet included, who said and has gone public and said, yes, he will entertain a debate on proportional representation. I will hold his feet to the fire on that.
a great question, and it comes back to another core value of the Green Party, which we all try and uphold, which is non-violence. And that doesn't just mean no violence, it means helping to create a culture, a positive culture of cooperation, and which leads to the next part of the question about electoral reform. If we feel somehow excluded from the process, from democracy, then how else are we supposed to feel included and cooperate? We do need to change our system. It has to be more cooperative, and one way is to reform our electoral system, and the Green Party supports that absolutely. We need to work towards, I believe, coalition governments. The current minority governments are dysfunctional, and we need to help move towards more effort towards cooperation in our government.
The odd time when I tune into that channel that shows us what's happening in government, I usually get ready to go to the bathroom. I have never seen so many people standing up to answer questions, being rude, being abusive, being sidetracking, and not answering the questions. Don't let your kids watch that. It is not an example of how to behave to anybody, anywhere, at any time. To answer the question about the changing of the vote pattern, yes, absolutely, we believe in the proportional vote. But why stop there? Let's take it further. Let's take it right up to no wit, so you have free opportunity to say what your constituents want you to say. Let's take it up to the Senate and get that on a much shorter term basis with no party affiliation, so you have real representation of the people in the final running, the final power in how our country runs.
Thanks to all of you. General Walter Nathanchuk, I haven't said that right, is Canada's now celebrated new Chief of Defence. He was sent by the Canadian government to work under the American military, and he commanded thousands of American troops in Operation Iraqi Freedom. As long as we support war, our ability to really tackle climate change is being massively undermined. What is each party's bottom line in this whole business of war in this day and age?
That's a 1 minute question if I've ever heard one. So, Gavin, do you want to take it away?
That's a very simple question to answer. The basis of conflict, the origin of conflict in the world today is because of our pursuit of cheap fossil fuels. If we can solve that problem, which is what Mr. Dion is trying to do, and in fact he is going to do when he's in power, we are going to find that we have resolved all our conflict issues, because instead of relying on the geopolitical forces at work and trying to go after a diminishing supply, we're going to be solving our problems right here, right in our own backyard, and resolving our conflicts through the driftwood.
Well, just a quick reminder again that the Green Party principle, one of them is non-violence, and that means, from a practical point of view, that Canada needs to restore its diplomatic muscle around the world. We're giving it up by pursuing deep integration with the US, and the Green Party is committed to scrapping SPP, Security and Partnership. Because SPP, part of the program is incremental militarization in conjunction with the US. We need to stop that now.
Comes back to, do we have control of our military as people? And the answer is no. Did we know that this man was over there until he came back? The answer, I think, is no. I didn't know about it. Anybody else know that he was over there commanding US troops? No, I don't think so. So what's happening here? Why are we at war anyway? We're actually fighting amongst ourselves. Shouldn't that be enough? We don't need to take our fight outside and occupy somebody else's land and say, do things our way, or worse yet, do it the way of our neighbors down south. War is a final resort where nothing else can be achieved. And my personal feeling is that if we can't sort it out, then we are not the country and the people that we should be.
What we've just seen is the hypocrisy of the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party sent us to Afghanistan. In fact, our current Chief of Defense Staff actually was on an exchange, and we do that all the time. We trade with our allies. There's a handful of soldiers that train at various positions. And they denied it, that they even had people there, but they did have them. That was under leadership when Mr. Dion was in cabinet. But I want to say this about Afghanistan. We've got Canadian men and women over there doing great work, sent by the Liberals, and in fairness, we supported that. There was 200,000 children going to school at the time. Today, there's 6 million. 2 million of those young girls. That never happened before. We built hundreds of medical centers. We're building schools. We're making a difference. Talk to a Canadian soldier, a man or woman who's come back, and they'll bring tears to your eyes the difference we are making. Our Prime Minister has announced that we will withdraw completely by February 2011 to allow our NATO allies time to adjust, because we've done a lot of heavy lifting with the Dutch, and this can't go on into perpetuity. It'll be our longest serving conflict. But we have made a huge difference, and don't ever forget that.
My question is to Mr. Lunn. Earlier this year, many people in this room wrote you letters asking for your support for efforts we were expending to get the CBC to maintain its programming. You replied to us at that time that it was not the government's role to interfere with decisions made by CBC about cultural matters. And although this was not what we wanted to hear, in fact, you were absolutely correct. However, more recently, your government has introduced amendments to Bill C-10, which empower the Heritage Minister...
Would you ask the question, please?
I'm just getting to it. Which empower the Heritage Minister to refuse funding to Canadian film projects in the form of tax credits. How do you reconcile these two completely opposite responses?
Thank you. First of all, with respect to CBC, we're committed to funding the CBC Radio, RDI, French, and we've maintained the current level of funding, but there are operational decisions that they put on the air. But what's actually up to governments to take leadership and decide what's appropriate for taxpayers' dollars to be spent on. And there was questionable programming where funds were going, which we, believe, fair enough. We didn't censor them like people were suggesting. If people want to make films for specific audiences, fair enough. But the taxpayers shouldn't be funding those. So also we've said there's certain type of films that we're not going to spend taxpayers' money on. If they want to raise the money privately, fair enough, go ahead and do that. But they shouldn't be worthy of taxpayers' dollars. So those are decisions governments made. Decisions, quite frankly, I think are the right ones. So, we're still funding the arts. We've increased funding to the arts by 20%. The Canada Arts Council, since we've taken office, the numbers are we've increased it by $50 million. These are numbers, hard, real numbers you can check out. We've actually increased funding. But again, we're making decisions in the best interest of Canadian people.
Thank you, Gary. Now, every other candidate has 30 seconds to comment on this, and I'm going to reverse the order, so Jeremy, you're up.
Where does censorship start and where does it end? Where does the role of government to help people in their cultural aims, aspirations start, and where does it end? That's what you, as Canadian people, need to make the decision. And you take that decision to your government, and they are bound by your decision to do what you want them to do.
I'd like to quickly share with you a quote, a Winston Churchill quote. It was World War II, and in Parliament it was proposed that arts and culture funding be cut. And Churchill stood up and said, "If we can't fund arts and culture, then what are we fighting for?"
I don't think Mr. Lunn's going to convince this crowd that he's the patron of the arts or the king of conservation. This government has systematically, through an ideologically driven campaign, attacked the arts, attacked women's programs, attacked the environment. I think that we need to look to your portfolio also to see that there's a lack of leadership there. There's been a lack of leadership on the Chalk River isotope issue, a lack of leadership on the oil tanker issue, and a lack of leadership on the nuclear waste issue.
This goes out to all the candidates. Just to bring it back home to Salt Spring, I'd like you to each think of one specific local issue that you would address for Salt Springers in Ottawa.
Okay, so let us go. Reverse order, so Jeremy, would you start with this one, or we'll follow around that way?
Well, having just had an experience of missing 2 ferries to this island, I think the first thing that really come up with a funding that BC, this broke little province we live in, can run a 24-hour service to this island. Now, some of you may say that's not a good idea because we'll get people coming backwards and forwards. All right, make it 24 hours off the island.
Well, I've been very involved in affordable housing on Salt Spring, and I think as we see our community getting hollowed out, as working people have to move off island and can't afford to live here, we need to resolve this issue. And affordable housing is symptomatic of a greater problem, that this island is not on a sustainable track, and we need to move on to it. And I think as a federal MP, I think we would be able to help with helping with things like affordable housing.
The Liberals in the past have taken a huge leadership role on Aboriginal issues, and I've been spending a lot of time with the various communities, Sacred South and Packaging, and on issues of the ability of access to traditional foods like the clam beds, like the herring runs. And I think that Salt Spring Islanders have already shown a lot of leadership in the issue of an agreement with the Halkidiki people and on sacred sites. I would like to see that whole issue of recognition of Aboriginal rights.
I've supported a number of initiatives over the years as a member of Parliament for various funding announcements, which I'm not going to get into, and continue to support them on an ongoing basis. Recently, I was successful in obtaining $10 million to double the Gulf Islands National Park Acquisition Fund, which could have an impact on any of the islands. And I think it's important, the leadership in general, on the economy, on the environment. I'm very proud of what our government has done in 2.5 years after the mess we inherited from Stephen Dion and the Liberals. What we've been able to do is, I know that issue is very important for everyone in this room.
In the last 30 years, the minimum wage has gone up about 2.5. The cost of housing has gone up 30% or more. We already mentioned how people here providing us services, our cashiers, our people who serve us coffee, are getting minimum wage or a few dollars more, and there's no housing. People in Vancouver, 50 people lining up per day. What is Canada going to do for our young people?
Thank you. And would you kick off with this one?
One of the things that we are struggling with here in Canada, you mentioned what are we going to do with young people. I think we need a massive investment in our education system. Our education system needs to be accessible and affordable, because if we are to improve our economy, we need trained people, we need educated people who have the creativity and the resources to meet the demands of the 21st century. The other thing that the Green Party is saying is that it's simply not okay to have poverty in this country. We need to eliminate poverty.
Stephen Dion is committed absolutely to ending poverty, 50% of child poverty and 30% of overall poverty. And he's done it through a very innovative mechanism of shifting taxes onto the things that we don't want and cutting income taxes at the lower income tax level, which is contrary to how Mr. Lund would like to inform you about what this whole green shift is about. It's critical that we tackle poverty, and he's also committed to 300,000 new units of affordable housing.
Well, thank you very much. We've actually put $1.4 billion into our affordable housing strategy with partnerships with every province in the territories. This is very important. It's the working poor. CMHC also commits $1.8 billion annually to this issue. Not to mention that we're working on our homeless partnering strategy as well. Recently, the Prime Minister announced up to a $5,000 tax credit to help first home buyers with their closing costs. This is very significant. This will be brand new to help young people get into the market for the first time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Andrew mentioned education, absolutely essential, but what the heck good is education if you don't have a job to put that education to use in? We have got to stop shipping our jobs away. We talk about housing for the poor. Okay, who's going to build those houses? The people we educate to build them? Yes, but we've got to give them a real reason for getting up in the morning and being proud to go to work and earning a living and feeling like human beings. It's no good just saying, oh, we can fix this, we can put a tax credit here, we can do this, we can do that. Let's do it. Don't talk about it, do it.
Jeremy, I'm sorry, I lost count. I thought you'd all responded, so I apologize for interrupting.
Hopefully I just go.
I'm sorry. Would you ask a question?
Okay. My question's about the SPP, so it might be good if Jeremy answered first, because I think you know. What I've heard is that Canada still has the ability to use the Bank of Canada to take control over our currency, but that if we sign on to the SPP further, we would lose that option, and that it has been used in the past by municipalities to create funds for infrastructure and so on without...
No, just finish your sentence.
Okay. Without going into debt to private banks. And I think this is a very important thing, and the NDP isn't here, but I believe the NDP had this as part of their platform as well. So I'm just wondering if the candidates are concerned about the SPP and that aspect in particular, the Bank of Canada's ability to control our currency.
I'll answer this in 30 or 60 seconds is almost impossible. There's two parts to the question. First, the SPP. There's the elephant. The economy aspect of the Bank of Canada, yes, we will lose that right. The Bank of Canada has financed Canada from 1938 to 1974, done it extremely successfully. I don't understand why we're not using it, and it's not being talked about, it's not being offered by any of the other parties. They refuse to acknowledge that the Bank of Canada even exists. And still now, the only person who's even mentioned SPP on this dais, apart from myself, is Andrew.
Let's, Gary, why don't you give it?
Yes, first of all, the SPP was created by the previous government, Paul Martin, in 2005. It's a Security Prosperity Partnership. It's a trilateral relationship between Mexico, United States, and Canada, where leaders get together, they discuss once a year a number of issues. There's no such thing as a common currency. There's no integration. That's absolute, all utter nonsense. In fact, you know what, in all seriousness, if you just let me finish, that, you know, really what we need to be focusing on is a bilateral discussions with the United States on issues that really impact just, you know, Canada and the United States. Quite often, because of the SPP, we get pulled into things like passports or the borders that primarily target at the U.S. southern border but impact Canadians in the north, now requiring passports to go into the U.S. But, you know, world leaders get together, they discuss things, whether it be APEC or the G8, that's what they do.
Thanks, Jerry. Yes, Brian.
Okay, Mr. Martin introduced the SPP in order to have an open, transparent ability for trading partners to discuss things openly. The idea was that leaders would go back to their parliaments and debate those in parliament. That's no longer the case. Now we have now we have conversations behind closed doors. It's got to end. Mr. Dion has been very clear. The SPP lack of transparency has got to end. It's got to go back to a conversation on ways that we can solve the world's incredible problems, and it should not be a race to the bottom, but a race to the top in terms of environmental and social standards.
Well, I said it once, but we would scrap the SPP. And this is one of the issues, one of the many issues of why I really can't support the neoliberal party agenda, because this is about reducing environmental standards and reducing social services and control over our autonomy in this country.
All right, let's move on to this question.
Yes, my question is primarily for Bryony and for Andrew. I realise that both of you were in the same party not long ago, and so therefore I assume that you have similar views. To me, it seems that the most important thing on the agenda for us these days is the environment, because without it we can't deal with any of the other things. We just won't be here. So I'd like to ask both of these candidates whether either of them would be prepared to step down in favour of the other, and if not, why not?
Who's going to come up? Brian, take it away.
I'll stay my 5 seconds.
Gary's looking forward to the answer. Okay, that question was put to me and I've been thinking about it for 17 years. Right now, on October 14th, you have an option. You either have Stephen Harper's vision of Canada or you have Stéphane Dion's vision of Canada. It's a one first past the post system. The only way that we can prevent Stephen Harper's vision of Canada from materializing is to vote for me in the next election.
Thanks for the question, Osman. I do feel like I have a little bit of credibility having run several times and advanced the Green Agenda for almost 10 years now. I also, with all due respect, as I said, I cannot support a neoliberal corporate party like the Liberal Party. I think if we want real change, we're going to have the courage to vote for it. And I do not accept the bullying from the Liberals, the fear-mongering. I mean, how many times, how many elections are we going to have to hear them crying wolf? I don't accept that. So if you want the Green Agenda, vote for the real thing.
So my question is for Mr. Lunn. And listening to what's been said so far today, basically you're the man who's talking numbers the whole time, and certainly those of us on the floor here and the rest of the people at the table have been talking family values, economy, yes, but also the ecology, those sorts of things. I'm wondering if you guys are ever going to figure it out.
I would argue, sir, that we are the party of family values and what we've been able to bring for Canadians. And they want strong, they want stability, they want leadership. And that's what they're getting from this Prime Minister. You know, we brought in a number of programs to help young families. $100 a month for children under the age of 6. For, let's say, I'm happy to answer.
Give him a chance to finish, would you?
I'll be respectful to you as well.
Yeah.
But anyways, we believe we've got a strong agenda. And I appreciate not everybody is going to share our views. We think it's important to have a steady hand, someone who's going to keep government spending down, going to make progress on the environment, and it's hard to announce what we're doing in a few seconds, but we've got a great record that we've done in 2.5 years. A record we're very proud of on family, on the environment, and on the economy. We don't think what the Liberals gave you for 13 years is worth voting for again when Mr. Dion was part of that. His record is an embarrassment. And how you people can pull the wool over your eyes and actually think that it's about to change, I think is something you should think about.
Can I just say something about the quorum here? These people have been generous enough to give us an afternoon of their time, and their time is in short supply at this point. If you agree with them, you're welcome to applaud. But I don't think that we should heckle or disapprove of what they're saying. You've asked them a question, they're honestly answering it. Give them a chance to finish. Thank you.
Hello. My question is principally to Mr. Lewis of the Green Party. and of course the others could comment too. There's going to be a big dilemma coming in the next decade in terms of oil exploration on this coast and in terms of tanker traffic. And we have to acknowledge that there are many interests in this province and across Canada, and they're not just corporate interests. There are Aboriginal groups along this coast who would support those things in terms of jobs and contributions to their land claims, benefits and so on, and there are many working people, whether in Kitimat or Prince Rupert. How would, or what does your party have to say about these contradictions in opposing oil exploration and tanker traffic? There's significant considerations of other groups in the economic spectrum.
One of the tragedies, I think, in our Canadian economy is that, by and large, we're still hewers of wood, drawers of water, and exporters of oil. And we have rested on our laurels. We get a great deal of income from that, but it's held us back in actually helping and actually diversifying our economy. And that is what we need to do, is we need to invest in communities to help communities build their capacity to build with educational resources and with investment resources so that we can develop economies, a low carbon economy. So for example, there are, for every 100 jobs in the oil and gas exploration, there's 500 jobs in renewables. That is the future economy for us, for our children. Clean jobs and a healthy environment. And that's where we need to put the investment.
We have to go back to why on earth are we giving tax credits to these oil companies to complete their explorations for something that we're trying to get away from? Isn't that a bit of a waste of money? I mean, wouldn't it be better to turn that tax credit, which is somewhere down the line there, and turn it into actual cash and say, yeah, let's go out and find this renewable resource that we're looking for, and don't give it to the oil companies. They've got more money than they can handle anyway. We need to give it to companies who will develop that. The oil companies will probably finish up owning it, so let's pay them. Let's look for those other alternatives. Get away from this whole business of having to send 60% of our product south, and because the pipeline's full, we have to make the coast of Victoria and the Vancouver Island black.
Mr. Dion's committed to cutting all subsidies to the tar sands, is committed to a carbon tax that's going to fairly apply to businesses, individuals, all of Canadians, plus a carbon budget that's a form of cap and trade down the line, which is harder to enact, slower to enact, but collectively those three things are going to add up to this, the deep, deep need to wean ourselves off fossil fuels. And in this shifting of the economy, we are going to be looking at very creative and a whole new batch of jobs that are going to they're going to be meaningful jobs to First Nations, because it's going to be something that we can all get behind.
Thank you very much for your question, sir. With respect to the moratorium on offshore exploration, I went out myself personally and spent 2 days with all the coastal chiefs in the Queen Charlotte and Chief Gujah. We had a great discussion. And they're clearly supporting our government's decision to maintain the moratorium. And we made a commitment on all of these issues that we would include them in any discussions should they happen. I absolutely believe that the First Nations, before anything can ever even happen, they have to be part of the solution to benefit their people. With respect to you raised the issue of tankers, listen, we've maintained the policies of Stefan Dion when he's the Minister of Environment. There's a tanker exclusion zone that keeps oil tankers 100 nautical miles off the coast of the Queen Charlottes. See, there are tankers going from Alaska down to Washington State, and this is strictly monitored, it's strictly enforced. I know there's a lot of comments out there by Ms. Penn and others which simply are not true. In fact, I think our record's very clear.
Gary, if you want to take more time, we'd be happy to listen to you. It's not often we get a chance to listen to the Minister on his own subject.
Well, listen, I think in fairness, I'll wait till the closing comments, or if there's more questions. I want to be fair with the other candidates. Thank you.
It's
seems clear that if we ignore the media and look at the background realities of what's going on here, this election campaign is not about choosing a government, because as a practical matter, most of the time, for most purposes, corporate America is the government of Canada. And that's not going to change simply because there may be a change in total government. So what I think we really need to know in order to decide how to vote is the views of the opposition candidates on the underlying causes of the problems that prevent happening the various things that you believe ought to happen. And so what I'd like to ask you, in order to get an understanding of your own views, is first of all, on what points do your own opinions on federal policy differ from the views of your own party leader? And in particular, what are your views on whether Canada should withdraw from NAFTA and the WTO? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. It's an excellent one. First of all, I want to say that Mr. Dion the strength of his leadership is that he wants to surround himself by ideas, by people with diversity of opinions and debate. Nothing is not on the table in terms of debate with Mr. Dion. He's made that very clear from the start. What he's interested in is getting a Canada that is economically feasible, that has got a good, sustainable economy, where the environment is protected and that we have a social net. To that end, he's going to be looking at all research and all opinions. So I'm going in there with my expertise, my opinions, my range of experiences. He's open to them. With regard to NAFTA, I'm open to a very, very broad discussion of NAFTA, because I've been looking at the implications of NAFTA on all sorts of levels, whether it's the provision of local farming or it's the impacts on the hollowing out. So the answer is he's open, I'm open, and we're going to talk.
Well, thank you very much. With respect to NAFTA and WTO, in fact, I advocate that we absolutely continue on the current course. We can have a debate whether it's going to be good for Canada. The WTO is a rules-based organization with countries from around the world. And global trading is increasing. We have 85% of our trade is with the United States. We have $1 billion a day that goes over the Windsor Bridge in two-way trade. We can't just shut ourselves off from that. This is what's so important to our economy, so that we have a strong economy, so we can have a public health care system, so we can have a social safety net to protect the things that are important to us. We can stand up here and just say whatever we want, but the reality is you're getting straight answers from me. That's what you're going to have to get from people in government. But the NAFTA agreement has worked. Has it had its hiccups along the way? Absolutely. And we'll continue to have that. But trading nations sit down and try to resolve those issues. But these are important if you want to have a strong economy, if you want to see the job growth that we've had in the recent years continue. Thank you.
It's our bank. By using our bank, we can start turning things around so that any money we borrow from ourselves. Any interest is paid back to ourselves. Right now, the SPP and the North American Union is basically run by 30 corporate powers in North America. If that's the way you want things to go, then you go with the status quo, which is the Liberals, the NDP, or the Conservatives, because that's the way they want to go. If you don't want to go there, well then, I'm your man.
Well, the Green Party, I have to say it again, would scrap SPP. We need some democratic renewal in our government if we are to be truly heard. We need to stop the influence of the whip so that party backbenchers actually serve you rather than their parties. And we need to abrogate NAFTA. Gary Long talked about public health care and social services, yet those are under threat because of NAFTA. Also, our bulk water, we might have bulk water export under NAFTA. Our energy supplies are under threat because of NAFTA. So we need to abrogate that and have a fair trade deal.
My question's for Bryony Penn and Andrew Lewis. So I'm in favor of a carbon tax, but as a resident of BC, I already have one. So what's going to happen now? If there's a federal carbon tax, am I going to pay twice? Am I going to pay double?
Brian, you might first one ask the double question. So, no, so come down and go first this time. Yeah, no, we're sharing. Okay.
Clearly, a carbon tax at the federal level would have to be take into account what's happening at the provincial level. And it's encouraging that our province is taking the lead on this. And what I would suggest, though, is that I'd like to just point out that I don't think the federal Liberal carbon tax is really adequate enough. I mean, if the Liberals believe that climate change and adjusting to a low-carbon economy is that serious, why are they starting at $10 a tonne? When Environment Canada did a study last year, they analysed what $50 a tonne would cost Canadians, and it would actually come out neutral for the economy. So that's where the Green Party stands.
So 2 points. It's starting off at $10 a tonne this year, and it's going to $40 per tonne in 4 years. So we're only $10 a tonne off the Green Party, and I think this is up. I mean, here we've stolen everything from the Green Party platform. What a great tribute to the Green Party, and now you've got an opportunity to get this policy in a government that is capable of doing something tomorrow. October 14th, it started.
Do I really want 30 seconds to comment?
Yeah, we'd like to have a quick one on this one. Yeah. Very quick. Ask two simple questions. Do you want a tax? Do you want a tax? Do you want a $2 deficit or $2 rebate on diesel? Or do you want to find something that you can do, something that will benefit you? Do you want an incentive to help you to turn your houses into completely hydro-free because you can do it? Solar panels on your roof, you might be feeding yourself back into the system and you get free heating, and what's more, you can now afford air conditioning.
Let me just respond on the carbon tax and why we're opposed to it. Again, you're going to have to pay twice because there's issues with the carbon tax coming under the federal green shift that do not apply under the provincial plan. They're completely different. And although Mr. Dion's running around the country now, he's in Winnipeg, he's saying, you know what, maybe this carbon tax isn't good for farmers. We'll have an exemption. Maybe it's not good for truck drivers, we're going to have an exemption. Maybe it's not good for fishers, we're going to have an exemption. The reality is I don't think it's good for any of you, and we need to take actions that will do greenhouse gases, not just impose higher taxes.
Most European nations, including the United Kingdom, as well New Zealand and Australia, now have mandatory labelling laws for genetically modified foods content. While here in Canada we still do not, even though polls have shown that the majority of Canadians feel it's their democratic right to know what's in their food. Bill C-517 to do this was voted down this year. As a matter of fact, 4 Conservatives actually voted to support mandatory labelling. I want to know how you would vote if this bill to require such labelling is once again tabled in Parliament. And I want you to remember that the additional cost of labelling of a can of genetically modified corn would be negligible.
Jeremy, would you start?
Oh yeah. I'm totally, absolutely in favour of that. The labelling I'm talking about. Did you know that we sent a whole bunch of wheat to Ireland? They ordered wheat and they got genetically modified and they turned it back. When I was over there recently, every Irishman I found, I shook his hand and said, thank you very much. And they said, basically, why, if we ordered a Rolls Royce, would we accept a Volkswagen? And now, our present government is suing Ireland because we're trying to give them that Volkswagen. No.
Thank you very much. First of all, we actually, as a voluntary GMO labeling system now in Canada for GMO free fruits, even that, but there are national standards. It is monitored, it's making sure that people put it. So there is a labeling system out there that is actually working. As far as how would I vote, in fact, you just acknowledged we had 4 members voted against the party, and they can. SSI people say that you can't. But as a member of cabinet, I am required to vote with the cabinet. That is our parliamentary system, and I cannot speculate what may or may not come before Parliament, but we would examine it and have a healthy, vigorous debate in cabinet. But at the end of the day, if I was back in cabinet, I would be voting the same as cabinet. Thank you.
I think what I heard Minister Ludd just say is that if something comes up which is threatening the health of this riding, the people in this riding, is that he will vote with cabinet and not for the people of his riding. And I don't intend to do that. Nobody, even if I'm in cabinet, I would step down if I felt that the people in this riding's health was put at risk. On the GMO issue, there's a commitment to labeling by Mr. Dion, and the national food policy is part of the discussions that he wants to have with all the MPs coming together. It made its way onto the National Policy Convention. And what they want to do is start thinking, instead about agriculture as an industry, let's have the Ministry of Food, so that the very first and foremost issue is that we're concerned about what we eat and our health, not in the
Well, I haven't seen any voluntary GMO labels on food, so it's not working. I would vote for the labelling on GMO foods, and I was disturbed to see that the Liberals actually did either abstain or vote against the opportunity when it came up in Parliament this spring. We need to also stop subsidising the GMO industry.
You spoke earlier about addressing issues of poverty in this riding. I'd like to hear you just elaborate a bit more about what that might look like.
We have to eliminate poverty in this country, and the targets that Bryony said, 30% or 50% below current levels, that for me is not adequate. In 1980, Chrétien said, let's get rid of poverty by the year 2000. And look at where we are. We still have the same rate of child poverty and general poverty in this country. And the gap between the rich and the poor is getting wider. So with we can resolve this quite easily through fiscal and tax regulations. We can eliminate income tax on those who earn up to $20,000. We can introduce income splitting for the middle class. There are so many ways that we can alleviate poverty through a healthcare system and through affordable housing.
Then we'd like to take 30 seconds to elaborate the plan.
So one has to look at the root cause of why these people are homeless. Why don't they have a home? Could it be because they don't have any money? Why would it? No, seriously, why don't they have any money? Could it be that because they're supposed to be kept there so that they can be controlled? Could it be that if we don't have these people who sleep indoors, we don't think to ourselves, oh my God, we're okay, we've got a home? Could that be what it's all about? How are we going to finance this business of giving these people homes? So we're going to do it two ways. First of all, we're going to use the Bank of Canada to make sure that there is some kind of opportunity for them to work. And secondly, we're going to help them get into that home because they will have the ability to come up with some money. Give them dignity, give them a reason to get out of the doorway, and I believe they will go.
We've actually increased funding on our homeless partnering strategy of the province to over $3 billion, more than any other previous government. But even more importantly, our government's record. Since taking office, we have created 750,000 net new jobs across Canada. That's what people need. They want to work. They want to be able to earn an income. And that's why I kept coming back, why it's so important that we have a strong economy, why it's important that we control government spending, why we have to keep taxes down so we put more money back in the pockets of Canadians. Yes, absolutely. We're making investments for the working poor, as I call them, and also in our homeless strategy. And we're working with various partners out there in the community to deliver us various programs. But it's really important that we also create jobs for these people as well. They want to ensure there's jobs out there. They want to ensure that their children can fulfill their dreams and aspirations in their own communities, that there's jobs that are going to be there. And that's what our government's doing. Thank you.
Canada's economy has suffered the worst 2 quarters in 17 years, placed Canada on the brink of a deficit. We've increased spending by 15% in 2 years, and we failed to respond while 154,000 manufacturing jobs disappeared. I'm sorry, I don't buy the statement that we're doing well on our economics. And again, I need to add that Mr. Martin and Mr. Chrétien spent those years getting Canada out of debt. That is what they spent most of their time doing. On the question of poverty, Mr. Dion was saying the 30-50 plan is in the next 4 years. It's doable, it's got a plan, it's got economic feasibility. It's what the Liberals are good at, is being good, fiscally responsible people. So that's the reality. We can't get 100% in the next 4 years, but we can get 30-50. 30% of all poverty and 50% of all children. And part of that is also to attack the real poverty of a disproportionate number of children in Aboriginal communities, and the Kelowna Accord is the way that we're going to do that.
Thank you all for coming to this afternoon. My question, though, is for Mr. Lunn and the Conservative Party. It has been widely reported that Stephen Harper has instructed all of the candidates not to talk directly to the press. And this is a freedom of speech issue for me, and with all respect, seems anti-democratic to me. And I'm wondering how all of you collectively can justify accepting this sort of a dictum from Stephen Harper.
First of all, and I appreciate your question, I'm going to tell you, it's absolutely not true. It's absolutely false. You can talk to the reporters that are here from the Driftwood. I've been a member of Parliament for 11 years, and recently when they call, I return their calls personally. You can ask reporters here from the Driftwood. They've got my personal cell phone number, and they call me directly. The Prime Minister was in Victoria 2 days ago. The national media came up to me and said, "Can we scrum?" I said, "Sure, let's go scrum." And I talked to every one of them. I return their calls. So I can assure you that the Prime Minister has not put out anything saying we can't talk to the media. That's absolutely false. And you have no word of that. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah,
which I guess first will go to Gary, because I think he's most familiar with this. And if your government were to form the next government, I have a question on international treaties and the principles around how we address those treaties. And in specifics in this situation, I'll use the Pacific Salmon Treaty ratification as an example, where the Department of Fisheries and Oceans is proposing selling our access to our fair and equitable share of resources in fish to allow U.S. fishermen and Bonneville Power to produce more power. For the tune of $30 million, we would be giving up hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of our access to fish as Canadians.
Would you frame it as a question?
The question is, a coalition of community representatives, First Nations, NGOs, and fishermen have asked your government to have an independent analysis done of this proposal, rather than the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, who even you have said are out of control and not accountable. Would you, when it comes to international treaties such as this, where we're proposing selling our access to our natural resources, ensure that we have that independent analysis done and that there is full debate in the House and in committee prior to any impact being put onto the stakeholders within the region?
First of the Prime Minister has made a commitment, and he has followed through on that. Before we ratify any international treaty, it will come before the House of Commons for a vote. And that's an obligation that he has lived up to. And I can assure you that we're not in the interest of selling off our national interests. Someone brought up earlier water to the United States. The Prime Minister has made an unequivocally clear statement that that would not happen. He's done that during the campaign any more than we would be selling our fish off in the interest of power. There are existing treaties. Some of them have been there long in place before we took office. I don't think that's an issue with this one that I'm aware of, but I will follow it up. But every single international treaty that we sign does come to Parliament for a vote, and it's something that we have followed through on. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Brian?
When this particular issue was drawn to my attention, it sent a very strong warning message to me. This is a very, very dangerous precedent. It means that we are starting to sell our natural resources, the rights to them, and it suggests to me that this current government is more interested in negotiating with our partners than our trading partners than our communities. It's not putting our local communities, our local fishers, our local First Nations as the primary, the guardians of what our resources. So this to me was a very dangerous precedent, and I don't believe I even got an answer from Mr. Lunn about what he's going to do about this particular issue in the Pacific Salmon Treaty.
Andrew?
I would just like to bring up another international treaty that I think we should be signing, and that is the Rotterdam Convention on Asbestos. And for twice now, the current Conservative government and the previous Liberal government would not sign the treaty on asbestos to list asbestos as a toxic material, and therefore giving countries such as India prior informed consent. They have to accept our products which go into the communities and create misery and cancer and untold health problems for people for who knows how long. Asbestos lives forever in the environment.
I can't quote the source, but I did remember seeing just a very short time ago that Canada right now has got something like 35 trade unions with different countries in effect, or coming into effect, are being negotiated right now. Prime Minister Harper said the other day, on the 16th of October, 2 days after our election, he is going to sign a new deal with the European Union. Now my question to Mr. Lunn is, how the heck is he going to do that? It's got to be discussed in Parliament first.
This mic.
I'm very cynical about politicians, but like when you're saying that NAFTA was a good thing, since NAFTA, homelessness has risen and billionaires had risen too. I know where are your friends. My question is there any one of you, because we had a lot of cuts with all the trades and free trades. I prefer fair trade, but it's free trades we have now. We have cuts and everything, but is there anybody here who's going to have the guts to cut the number of billionaires by 100%?
And do you want to try to take on the billionaires?
We do need to narrow the gap between the rich and the poor. It's certainly getting out of hand, and the Green Party is proposing to introduce another tax bracket starting at $150,000 per year. So hopefully that'll take care of the billionaires.
There are several countries around the world that have a flat tax system. I think New Zealand was when they started with 15% flat tax for everybody. Now if you're a billionaire, that means a heck of a lot of money gets paid in tax, right? If you're sleeping in a doorway, you don't pay anything. That seems to me to be a very equitable tax. And by doing that, eventually, as in New Zealand, I believe it's down to 7% now. I'm not absolutely sure on that, but I know it's greatly reduced from what it used to be. Billionaires? Well, gee, I wish I was one, and then I could tell you how to get rid of me.
You know, let's look at just pull one other example. Bill Gates, who's probably one of the wealthiest men and worth more than multi-billions. You know, that man has created jobs around the world. He has donated more for humanitarian causes than most Western governments, and has done a lot of good. And so, you know, we can sit here and talk about, well, we don't like people to get rich, but they are part of our economy. I think more importantly, sir, what we want to do, ensure young people have jobs. Young people, when they get out of school, that there will be jobs that they can fulfill their dreams and aspirations. That's what's important, so that they can go on. But it's easy to sit here and criticize people that are very successful. But don't forget the good that they do as well, and what they contribute to the economy, what they give back to mankind. I would suggest that they're not all bad like you may 100%. Thank you.
I think what we're talking here about is whether we have a government that allows unregulated, unbridled capitalism versus a government that recognizes that we're a pluralistic society, that puts checks and balances and regulates where it's appropriate. What the Liberal government is looking at is bringing a whole new way that we look at the economy. By providing constraints like tax and pollution and waste, and regulating things like the gouging that goes on within the oil and gas industry, and removing subsidies, which is how these people are getting very, very rich. What we're doing is we're creating opportunities for young people to get into businesses that we can all feel very happy about, because we're no longer pitting billionaires versus the homeless. What we're talking about is we're developing economies that have the environment and social justice issues at the heart of the bottom line.
My question concerns the issue of daycare. Mr. Lund, you referred to the $100 taxable income that you are handing out for children under 6, and when faced with an $1,100 a month daycare bill, my family decided it was not feasible for us to have both of us working and decided to have one of us stay at home. I'm wondering if any of the parties are considering income splitting for families to encourage people to stay home and raise their children. And also, what are you planning on doing about the daycare issue for those families who can't afford that? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I can't tell you if we're considering income splitting. You should know we've got income splitting in for seniors. I think it would be a great thing for families, but that's something that would be announced by the Prime Minister, not by me. Listen, with respect to daycare spaces, we've given $250 million to the provinces to create daycare spaces. So we're actually creating daycare spaces. We've also got a program with employers to create daycare places in the workplace, and you get up to $10,000 tax deduction for creating those daycare spaces in the workplace. Those are real things that are happening. The Liberal government in the past had a lot of talk, but they never delivered. They never created daycare spaces. You know, we've actually delivered these funds to the provinces in addition to our $1,200 universal child care benefit. So, is there still more work to be done? Absolutely, but these are real results that we're getting. Thank you.
Well, I've got 4 grandchildren who need daycare, and I know they're not getting enough money. Their parents are not getting enough money to do it. What's out there just isn't adequate. And again, we come back to this thing of it's always to do with money, money, money. We're so controlled by money. We need money, we want money, we have to have money to do all these things. And then every time we try and make a dollar, somebody comes along and says, oh, we need some more tax, we need some more tax, we need some more tax. Let's make the jobs that we have local jobs that are really valuable, that pay what they're worth instead of just minimum wages, so that we can have one worker families for families that are very young, so that kids can go home from school and there'll be mum or dad waiting for them. That's what we should be aiming for, not passing them off on some daycare somewhere or some babysitter. We need to get back to the real family values where the kids can come home and there's somebody waiting for them who is their mother or father.
We talk a lot about financial deficits and the squeeze on families, but we also live in an increasingly time-constrained world where we all seem to be racing harder and harder and faster and not getting anywhere. And really, as families, we need more time with our children, and our government can help. And one of the proposals that the Green Party is suggesting is income splitting for families. It would cost $3 to $5 billion, and it would come from part of the carbon tax revenues. That will enable families to spend more time with their kids. I know for myself, 1 year, my family and I, we spend $12,000 on childcare. And so $100 a month is insulting. It would have enabled my wife or I to have spent more time at home. We could spend more time volunteering in our community, running for politics.
Before the government was brought down, the Liberal government was brought down, Ken Dryden crafted an incredible plan which was going to provide spaces for families for daycare. It was called the Ken Dryden Accord, and it had all sorts of wonderful facets to it, but it was creating spaces. I go not door to door, and I'm finding women that are, and fathers that are number 200 on the waiting list. It's creative, it's crazy. We can't be a nation that has got people waiting for 5 years to get their children on a daycare list. I mean, the kids are going to be grown up. It's crazy. There's a plan. Vote for me. We had to go to the extent when we built a daycare. So who do you want in government? Someone who's gone through it with their 2 children and knows how important it is, or somebody that still thinks that $100 is going to solve the problem, a month. It's crazy.
I have an open question for all the candidates. There's been a lot of fuss about private clinics and healthcare customers as clients, and I was just wondering what you would say to your voters who might be concerned that we're moving towards an American fee-based healthcare system, and also if your party or you have any ideas on healthcare reform, I'd like to hear. Thank you.
That's a very big question. Okay, privatization. I come from a medical family. My father, my brother, my sisters, sister-in-laws. This is a topic that I've thought long and hard about. One of the biggest central platforms of the Liberal Party is prevention, 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 prevention. If we don't tackle that part of the equation, we're going to continue to see escalating healthcare costs. Right now, the provinces are committing 50% of their budgets. It's crazy. One of the reasons is that we're getting an increase in chronic diseases, diabetes, asthma, cancers. Largely, these are environmental problems, bad air quality, children that aren't getting opportunities to get outside and healthy. So what the whole purpose of this action plan that Mr. Dion is suggesting is that we're creating a new economy that rewards activities, economic activities, and the reduced consumption of cheap energy that's contributing to our prevention, our health issues. There's a whole lot more.
Yeah, this is the single largest expenditure of government. When we took office, we were transferring $25 billion to the provinces for healthcare. That has increased today to $41.7 billion. And so, there's a lot of issues that need to be dealt with. In fact, it's bringing his colleague, Keith Martin, who's advocated for a two-tier style healthcare system. What we need to do is we need to look at the money that we are spending and make sure that it's getting down to the patients. we've contributed $624 million to cut down patient wait times. We've got agreements with all the provinces. We are doing that. But we need to ensure that there's accountability and that we're getting results. This is an enormous amount of money. It goes through very complex, so all the provinces, administer health care. Then there's no silver bullet in all of this. We do have waiting lists coming down, and when the system works, it does work marvelously. You talk to people that have had to go in for cancer or heart treatments, and they get in right away. But this is a lot longer than a 30-second discussion, I can promise you that.
Thank you.
Well, I guess it's me, 30 seconds, a minute. It's almost impossible to cover it under this. But what it really boils down to is if you have all these private clinics, who's benefiting from it? The people with money and the corporations who own the clinics. But what about you and I? I'm just about broke, so do I benefit from it? No. Do I get any money at all for my naturopathic beliefs? Because I don't believe that anybody should have to take drugs or anything like that. I look after my body naturopathically. Do I get any help? No. So why can't we get that help? We talk about huge amounts of money. Without healthy people in the country who are well educated, who have jobs, who have security, have sovereignty, it's all mute. We need to get back to the basics, really down to the deep basics. What's it all about? Healthcare is a subject which you can talk about for hours. I don't have hours.
The Green Party supports the 5 principles of the Canada Health Act, and we believe it needs to remain in the public domain. Our healthcare system is a public good. We own it. Let's keep it that way. However, we do run the risk of a NAFTA challenge if from American for-profit business, and so we need to guard against for-profit healthcare setting up in this country, because that is going to undermine what we already own. There are many areas which we could talk about healthcare. One of the fastest rising areas of healthcare costs is pharmacare. I believe we need a national pharmacare program to keep control of our health.
Thank you. Right hand, Mike Kimber.
Okay, it's not very often that I actually get to thank the Conservative Party for something they've done, but in my role of victim services, they've done one good thing. They have an ombudsman now for victims of crime, and so if you have a problem with the criminal justice system, you have somebody to speak on your behalf. But on the flip side, they got this get tough on crime position that I don't particularly understand, because when I work at the police station, what I see is people with addictions, mental illness, homeless people all being criminalized because of social issues. And so I already know what Gary Lunn's response is going to be to that. So I'd like to hear from Andrew Lewis and what he would do around those social issues, mental illness and addictions, and those things that contribute to crime.
The social issues, I believe, that contribute to crime are things like poverty. That is why we need to eliminate in our society, and that is why the Green Party is so focused on that in our program. Another area we need to deal with is drugs and illegal drugs in a society. We need to treat addiction not as a criminal issue, but as a health issue.
Do you want to take it next?
Oh, do you want?
Yeah, you want to do it next?
Yeah, we've been, the Liberal Party has been sitting on many forums and task forces looking at the whole question of homelessness, addictions, the question of mental illness and the relationship between mental illness and addictions and homelessness. There's incredible research that's been done now. There's many models all around the world for what works. So the Liberal government is committed to finding out best practices, what works, listening to the local communities because they know best in terms of where the first person that we come to is we're going to go and talk to Kimberly, because those are the people that understand the issue intimately. No, we're not going to stand at the top and dictate what needs to be done from somewhere in Ottawa. It's going to be me talking to Kimberly, talking to the people that are in SWOBA, talking to the people that are in all the different social services, and then taking that message back to Ottawa.
Sorry. No, we are getting tough on crime, and we absolutely believe it's the right approach. You know, when we have people who are committing violent crimes with guns, yes, we're imposing mandatory prison sentences. People who convict multiple repeat offenses of home invasions and invading the most personal space of people, yes, absolutely. These people we need to toughen up our justice system. You know, people are doing street racing. We're getting tough on white-collar crimes, on money laundering. You bet we are, and we absolutely think it's the right approach. But we're also putting, you know, with respect to drugs, we're putting more money into rehab. If people want help, we want to ensure that there's help for them, that is available. I practice in the youth criminal justice system, and there's some very troubled people in the system. And sometimes when you get them in the system on probation, you can actually get them into the help they need. You can get them into programs that they need to get out of that cycle. So yes, I think it's the right approach.
My question is how much of this is provincial and how much of it is federal? We're treading on pretty dicey ground here because the provincial government has a lot to do with this. And my idea about the role of the Canadian federal government here is to offer support and guidance to the provincial government. So it's all very well to have these standards right the way across the country, but each province has its own unique problems that don't necessarily form under that one standard. There has to be some kind of ability to say, okay, BC has a huge homeless problem in Vancouver. That's where we need to help. This is where we need to help the provincial government or the city of Vancouver. We don't really need, as a federal government, to get involved in the nitty-gritty. We need to have maybe some kind of umbrella system, but we need to leave this particular subject, I believe, to the provinces. But I will say one thing. I do not think that talking about people putting kids in jails that we don't necessarily have is the right thing to do in an economical situation that we have now.
My question is for each one of you. What will your party do to right what has gone so terribly wrong in Canadian Omar Kadar's case?
Omar Kadar faces very serious challenges, very serious charges of terrorist-related activities. He has received all the consular services from the Canadian government, and we will receive a trial and receive due process. But he is facing serious allegations, and our policy, I would like to add, has not changed one bit from the Liberal government. I've been listening to this up here on stage. Greenie says one thing, and I can tell you the record up there in 13 years. Omar Kadar has faced very serious allegations, was put in Guantanamo by the Liberal Party of Canada, was facing these serious charges, and we have maintained that but ensured that he has received the consular services. So regardless what Greenie is going to say, you should think of the facts, and that is exactly what has happened.
Well, let's hear what Bernie wants to say.
Wow.
Thank you. I think you all know that a government that has compassion, has the best interests of pushing forward Canada's international reputation that has been a long-standing reputation as peacekeepers, as international leaders in setting up round-table forums for discussion on complicated, complex international issues. This is what Canadians believe us to be. There is no way that we should be leaving people to be tortured in prisons in Guantanamo. I'm going to argue with Gary on the basis that I think that he's misrepresenting what the Liberal government did. Thank you.
All right, my understanding is that that young man was Afghan, basically, and he was living in Canada. And he went home to try and do something to help protect his homeland. He was shot, he threw a grenade and he killed an American soldier, and now he's been sitting down in Guantanamo, absolutely abandoned by the entire political system in Canada. And I think that is absolutely appalling. And I would like to know how many of the American forces who have also killed thousands of people in Afghanistan are being sitting in the same place for something which to me is much more heinous than protecting what could be your homeland.
This is a serious issue. Canada seems to be, we've forsaken our diplomatic muscle around the world as we're leaving not just Omar to struggle in an illegal court, but there are other Canadians suffering as well around the world. And we need to bring him home. He's a Canadian citizen facing charges in an illegal court.
Yeah, I think there's something that almost everybody in the room knows. We're facing a global climate emergency, and we're not talking about that. We need the federal government to intervene for us to save this country and the planet. And there's something that we can do, the federal government can do, and if they haven't got the ability now, as elected, you could get it. And that is so simple, won't cost any money. We'll lower the speed limit all over Canada. Bring it down to 90 or 80 and keep it there. There's no reason anybody should drive any faster. You can save money on the healthcare system, there'll be fewer accidents, and people will probably enjoy life a little bit better than they are now. Thank you.
Andrew, do you want to take this and keep it to 30 seconds this time around?
The climate crisis is something that we've been aware of for at least 20 years. It's been a slow motion unfolding. Now, as we become more and more aware, it's clear that we have lacked the leadership, and we currently lack the leadership to do anything about it. That's what we need. It's true leadership to use the myriad of solutions that are already being used out there around the world that are helping to reinvigorate our other economies. Why are we being left behind?
Sure.
30 seconds. Anybody here heard of the Zen motor car which is manufactured here in Canada? We can't even ride the damn thing in this province because it doesn't go fast enough. But they are developing a battery down in Texas which apparently will give this thing a radius of 140 kilometers at 70 miles an hour. You plug it in for 10 minutes and she's ready to go again. Where is that motor car?
Thank you, Madam, for your suggestion. You're absolutely right. Lowering the speed limit has a huge impact on the emissions that go up. It is provincial jurisdiction. I just want to talk, though, you need to talk about climate change, and you're right. This is a serious issue. And I've been sitting up here today, I listened to the answers from Bryony. Did I get it right? You know, she said, we're removing the subjects, like on the oil sands. She called it the tar sands. You know what? They actually, the Liberal Party brought them in. Accelerated capital cost allowance for the oil sands. It was our Prime Minister who announced the phase out of those subsidies. All the oil sands projects have to impose carbon capture and storage. This is real action. It's taking real results. But we're down to that 30-second bell.
Okay, there's been no effect because these are aspirational goals as opposed to hard caps. In terms of innovation, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at how we're going to get ideas that are going to actually curb emissions. The green shift has been proven to curb emissions. It curbed emissions in Denmark, brought them right down to levels that were were consistent with what the Kyoto targets were in Sweden. The other thing that no one's talked about in any of the parties, but Mr. Dion is putting it out there, it's the fact that we've also got to look at our living carbon. 50% of the boreal forest will remain intact.
I have a more domestic question for all the candidates. In common with many parents on Salt Spring, even though I'm an old, I was going to say father, I don't know the surname. I have a 19-year-old son in second year university. In this country, in UBC at least, the cost of tertiary education, secondary education is $16,000. I've just had another increase in tuition fees of $2,000 a year. So I have to find $18,000 a year after taxes. In Germany, to send a child to a secondary university education is 500 euros. In France, it's free for basic. You can pay more for higher education. And my question is, what, if any, programs do any of the candidates propose to increase the intellectual inventory of this country, which is going to be vital to solve future problems, by allowing more people who are bright enough to get into university? Thank you.
Jeremy, you haven't gone first for a long time, so take it away.
Okay, don't have very much time with this, but you know, not so many years ago, university education was something within the reach of everybody. We now have a massive debt, which we have to try and pay off. We have interest on that debt that amounts to $2,000 per person for every man, woman, and child in the country. How can we possibly, under the existing financial arrangements that we have, thanks to these two parties here, possibly afford to help people who deserve to go to university? Come on, it's time to wake up. We need to get away from this whole business of spending money we don't have. We need to use the Bank of Canada to help these young people to get the education they deserve, they need, and absolutely we need them to have it so that we can move forward. The Bank of Canada, as I said before, is our bank. We're not using it except to prop up places that down south that are going nuts, or banks here that have got into trouble. We're not using it for the people of Canada. We're not using it for the education of the young people in universities.
Education is the key for Canada's future. We need to invest more in education. We need to invest more in expanding places in our higher education and training facilities. We need to reduce the debt burden for students. One way we can do it is guarantee 50% of tuition fees are returned to the student when they graduate. We need to target grants and bursaries for students. This is the way that we're going to actually help parents and help students become Canadian citizens who can contribute to our economy and create a vibrant economy and livable communities.
So I have a 17-year-old going to university next year. I have a vested interest in this answer. Right, under the current regime, students have to earn more than $20,000 before their education tax credits cut in. That's going to be changed so that they can apply, they can replace these credits on earnings less than $20,000. That's a critical point. Secondly, there's going to be a 20-year, $25 billion education endowment fund for very essential student bursaries. All students will be eligible for a $5,000 guaranteed student loan, regardless of parental income. And there's going to be, and this is very important too, they're going to extend the interest-free grace period from kids coming out of university. It's not going to be 6 months anymore, it's going to be 2 years to give them the grace to get into employment and start paying back this terrible debt load. And you can be sure, finally, there's an increased support for research and development, $500 million committed to research and development, and that's going to open up a lot of opportunities for kids while they're going to school.
Our government, we've done a few things already. We've exempted scholarships from taxation. We brought in tax credits for books and other materials taken from university. And we overhauled the Canada Student Loan Program to ensure that it's more accessible and great across the board, as opposed to in the past, there was some scholarship programs that were going up to a very select few, weren't reaching enough students. You know, the reality is, you're absolutely right, education is very, very expensive compared to when I went to school, and it's challenging for young people. I was able to go out and work in the summer and earn enough to pay for my own university. And unfortunately, that's tough for kids today. But we are making changes, we're moving in that direction, we're working with the provinces, making those investments to make education and, you know, post-secondary education available for everyone who wants to be there. Thank you.
All right, that mic.
In this riding, Green voters are being asked to vote strategically to help defeat the Harper government. And I know, Ryan, that you support proportional representation, and we've spoken on that. But I've talked to the Liberal Party headquarters in Ottawa repeatedly, and I have scoured the website, and I can see no support at all for proportional representation. And in fact, they say the opposite. So I'm wondering if your position is wishful thinking, or if it will in fact actually happen.
When Mr. Dion made the agreement with Elizabeth May to swap candidates in each other's riding, he also committed in that letter, and it's available for, and I can forward it to you, to open up the debate on proportional representation. And I think further is that I'm committed, and it's very open that I'm committed to going into, and I'll be in caucus and committee, whatever, to furthering the debate on proportional representation. Until you have a mainstream political party that's got people within it that are willing to get this debate there, it's just going to be people calling from the outside. That is why, it's one of the main reasons why I decided to join the Liberal Party, is that we need a voice for proportional representation within government, and it is on the public record.
But they're saying the opposite.
It's on the public record. Well, we can talk about it later on.
Does anybody else like to comment? Okay, Andrew.
It's all very well for Dion to offer vague promises about pro-rep with Miss May, but there is nothing in that platform. The Liberal Party voted against electoral reform at their last convention. So until we elect Green MPs to actually push the agenda, I don't believe we're going to get any concrete progress on this front.
We have tried to make changes without changing the Constitution. We have brought in 8-year term limits for senators. The Liberal Party of Canada has blocked that bill. They have stopped us from trying to appoint elected senators. So I don't believe it. I think you're absolutely right when you say wishful thinking. I've been listening to that all afternoon. I mean, Ryan said these might be aspirational goals as opposed to hard caps, referring to our plan on emissions. For CO2, we actually have a hard cap of 20% by 2020. But you want to talk about aspirational goals. If you look at the record of the Liberal Party, don't take my word for it. Look at what they didn't do for 13 years. You know, Brian, you talked about the Ken Dryden Accord. That, your words, he was going to create spaces. They were there for 13 years, and they didn't do it. They didn't get it done. Greenhouse gas emissions rose by 35% under when the Liberals were in power, and they didn't get it done. Why should we believe them now?
Because you opposed it.
Jeremy, go ahead.
I think we're forgetting something here. Are we voting for parties and leaders, or are we for up here asking you to vote for us?
Okay, the question from Ms. Mike.
My question is for all the candidates. This might seem like an old issue to a lot of people, but it's still very important to me, and I don't think it'll ever go away. And that's goes back to the reason why Canadian troops are in Afghanistan. And so my question is, do you personally, and does your party, or would your party, support an international investigation, say a royal commission, into the events of September 11th? just to make sure we're not there for the wrong reasons. Thank you.
Absolutely, we've been asking for that ever since the darn thing happened. We do not believe that what came out of that so-called commission report was even close. And I personally I'm blown away by the fact that most people don't even know what Building 7 was. They don't even know it came down just like a... Why? Simple question. Has anybody ever heard about that high-rise building in Spain that burned for 3 years and it was almost identical in structure to the Twin Towers? Pardon me, not 3 years, 3 weeks. 3 weeks it burned and it never fell. It was gutted, sure, but it didn't fall. There was something horribly wrong with that whole program of what happened on that day. We had 90-year-old people that died there, Canadians. We don't know why they died. We do know that as a result of that, United Nations had their arms twisted and went into Afghanistan. My personal feeling is we should never have gone in the first place, but if we had, we should have been out within a year because we knew it wasn't right.
Right on.
Again, you can, this is multiple UN resolutions. There was 2 prime UN resolutions that asked NATO forces to go into Afghanistan. This is a UN mission. There was multiple UN resolutions. There's 35 member NATO countries on the ground. So no, I don't think you should have an inquiry into the United Nations and into the resolutions that they passed. I think you should focus on the amazing work that has been done. And talk to the Canadian men and women that have served us so proudly over there. Talk to the ones that have come back and ask them if they're making a difference. Yes, there has to be an end to this mission. This will be the longest serving conflict the Canadian forces have ever served in. That's why our Prime Minister announced a full withdrawal by February 2011. But it has to be orderly, and you have to give our allies time to respond. That is the responsible thing to do. Thank you.
I think fundamentally Canadians have felt that we've lost our way. We used to be given a tremendous sense of pride in that we were independent thinkers, we weren't following the American model, that we were capable of providing leadership on many, many issues. I think Canada has lost its way. And I think that what is being offered on October 14th is an opportunity for a government that is open to debate, open to discussion, and open to determining what is our way with future conflicts in the world. I mean, at some stage we do have to question the fact that we are now killing the very people that were armed a generation ago. And that does raise questions about strategy, not only at the UN table and in NATO, but just internally. So I think what that begs is that Canadians want to get re-engaged in the debate about our international role. And I think it can cover all of these, everything that we've, experienced in the last since 9/11.
Do you have a question, Mike?
I'll just very quickly say, your question was about...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was a question about an international commission on 9/11, and I'm afraid I can't really answer that because I'm not sure what it might achieve. I would be happy to talk to you afterwards about that. And as for Afghanistan, we went in, the Liberals took us into Afghanistan. I believe it was because it was a stop to the Americans, because we didn't go into Iraq. So we went to Afghanistan, and it's been a mission that's lost its way right from the very beginning. We have to sort it out now that we're there, we have to sort it out. I see that the Conservatives have flip-flopped for a long time. They were saying, you can't set dates, we've just got to stay till the mission's finished. Well, now that perhaps they realise that this is a dead end for Canadians and we need to get out as soon as possible.
Andrew, I apologise, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I just wanted to start off by making a statement back to the childcare. I've recently been forced to turn down a very, very good job on this island because of the lack of childcare. For registered daycares on Salt Spring Island, there are 4 children under the age of 1 that can be cared for. My economic status has been dropped because of the lack of childcare. So how can you tell me that you are really making changes for us? My question is regarding the North American Union. I am wondering where you each stand on this issue, and if you really believe joining a country that is going into an economic recession, do you really believe that this is a solution to help our country?
Andrew, would you start on this one, please?
Well, yet again, we come back to SPP, which of course we need to scrap. The North American Union is about an incremental integration between Mexico and the US and Canada. And as we need to diversify our economy, we need trade relations that are fair and protect our sovereignty. And we're losing that, and we're risking being sucked into the orbit of a collapsing economy down south.
Personally, I would love to see Mr. Dion and Mr. Obama sit down with full transparency and talk about how, as national leaders and how, as a collective, we are going to get ourselves out of the 3 biggest challenges facing humanity. A trading partner forum for discussion is not inherently a bad thing. I absolutely welcome people sitting down and figuring out how are we going to solve these problems. When you have leaders that are open, that are transparent, that have a keen intellect about how to solve problems and engage many, many people around them to come up with solutions, then you have a collective working for the issues that are at stake. I don't want to throw away a forum for discussion. I want to throw away bad leadership, lack of transparency, and an autocratic, ideological government.
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, I can tell you there's no North American Union whatsoever. This is absolute utter nonsense. World leaders, they sit down, they discuss issues with respect to their respective countries. Look at the record of our Prime Minister standing up for Canadian sovereignty. He's the first Canadian Prime Minister ever to take an interest in the North. We're now requiring all ships entering the Northwest Passage into Canadian waters for the first time have to register with Canadian officials, the Canadian Coast Guard. This has never been done before. You've never had a stronger Prime Minister on the world stage standing up for our sovereign interests. Yes, world leaders sit down. At the conclusion of these meetings, they do release a communique, what they discussed. Our Prime Minister at the recent meetings has discussed everything from our softwood lumber agreement to issues with passports across the US border and getting extensions for that, issues that are of concern to us. The Windsor Bridge, ensuring that we can have adequate trade moving across that. Those are what the issues that they do discuss. And they are as transparent and public at the end of these meetings, but obviously the meetings are held in private, as they always have been under the previous Liberal government as well. Thank you.
It does not apply to this particular equation. To say that the North American Union is wrong, well, maybe we should talk to the 30 corporations who are setting this whole thing up and tell them they're producing a pie in the sky somewhere. I don't know what it is about this particular government, but they will not tell you what is going on about the SPP and the North American Union. And the only reason that I can think they're doing this is because they're ashamed and they're frightened that if the people of Canada ever find out what they're doing, they will be run out of the country on a short rail.
We're getting down to the last few minutes. We've got 17 minutes left. I'll take 1, 2, 3 questions. We're going to give you half a minute to ask your question and half a minute to each of the candidates to respond. And then the candidates will make their closing statements. So, please, ask you a question. Sorry to make you ask.
I would appreciate knowing what you will do to help U.S. war resistors stay in this country.
Gary.
First of all, U.S. war resistors that claim refugee status in this country have gone through a process, through the refugee appeal process, and every single time they've been deported back to the United States. First of all, the people that serve in the U.S. military, there's no inscription now. They volunteer. They volunteer, and they can go through the process in their country. There is a due process for people that claim refugee status, and our country welcomes bona fide refugees, and people can make a claim. But there is a process, and in every case, they've been sent back to the United States because they have not been declared as a refugee.
Okay, Jeremy?
Well, my answer to this is very simple. The CIA and the FBI and Blackwater and all the American military are totally welcome to come into our country under this government at any time they want to do whatever they want. But deserters from that system, we don't want that. What is going on, people? They don't want to fight. They want to come up here, and they want to be good, solid citizens in our country. We don't want them. Is that what you don't want? Or is that what the government doesn't want? I want them. I think they would be good for us up here.
I think we should be able to accept war resistors who are fleeing from the effects of an illegal war.
Trudeau, welcome to the Draft Dodgers. Thank God, because amongst you are some fabulous contributors to society, artists. What would Salt Spring be without the Draft Dodgers? And again, Mr. Dion has welcomed his arms to the war resistors.
A quick question. Tar sands, should we use clean natural gas to get dirty oil out of the sand, or should we use nuclear power? And if we want to use nuclear power, would it be safe to have a nuclear power station in Saanich, say, and generate energy there without, and not having to have the high power transmission coming from the mainland?
I'll try to do this in a minute. First of all, it's up to the provinces to decide on the energy mix. Something that each province decides on their own what is their energy mix. We're blessed with a lot of hydro. Other parts of Canada are not. Ontario is 50% nuclear power today. Alberta is looking at nuclear power for energy, for the oil sands, and that will be a decision. But when they do make that decision, there will be a process that we'll go through to ensure that it's done in a safe manner. But so we don't take a position where it should be, but nuclear power, from purely environmental perspective, is emission-free, there's no greenhouse gases, and there is no pollution.
Thanks,
I'd love to have a longer discussion with respect to the waste, because those are issues that should
Brian,
be discussed.
would you?
Okay, I've only got 30 seconds. Would you trust somebody that can't be trusted on Chalk River on the nuclear file on this issue? I'm sorry. Secondly, BC is nuclear free. Third, federal involvement at the tar sands is nil. Right now, there is no federal involvement. We have got to get at the table. If you want somebody to represent federal interests at the whole tar sands question, then you're going to have to vote for me, because otherwise you have no say.
I think Mr. Lunn is being a bit disingenuous, because the federal government does have a large say about nuclear power. The federal government regulates environmental standards and safety standards, and this government has undermined our regulatory body. In fact, Canada is now equal with Iran in politicizing our regulation agency. So no, we should not have nuclear power in the tar sands.
Has anybody here recently been up to the tar sands? I haven't been there for about 15 years. And the last time I went there, it was an awful mess. Man, it was a mess. I I don't think that thing should even be there in the first place. Yes, there's oil there, but why are we trying to dig it out? It's thinking that and the oil is coming out. California, our biggest consumer, has already said we don't want the oil that comes out of those tar sands. So what's going on? No to nuclear power.
Do you have a question? The last question.
I'd like to know why there is such a lack of focus and abandonment for the mentally ill who are so compromised in our criminal justice system.
Andrew, would you take that, please?
Why? Why indeed? We have a situation in Canada where people are falling through the cracks, where we're not dealing with critical issues like poverty, homelessness, and unity. We need to start pulling together and start showing our compassion again, and start electing MPs who can actually care for our communities.
The mentally ill were dropped off as a federal responsibility in our health system, and they are now back on, I can assure you, and we need now a government in power that is really going to seriously look at this issue from all its complexity and deal with it and work with every single jurisdiction on this issue, because it is huge. And the second point is that mental illness is going up for many, many reasons. And one of them is that we've got declining environment, declining social net, and an economy that isn't able to provide meaningful work. And again, the green shift is all about changing the way we do things.
The question was concerning the justice system, and the fact is, I believe, and so does the Canadian Action Party, believe that the justice system is totally broken. If you have the money, you can get the justice. If you don't, where are you? If you have a problem with anybody and they've got more money than you, they will just take you to that point where you can no longer afford to fight them. So the mentally ill, unfortunately, fall in the cracks, and that is not fair. Everybody falls in the cracks, and that's not fair. Canadian Action Party says people, people, people.
I don't disagree with you now on the mentally ill. That is an area that we need to do a lot more on. I know Minister Flaherty has championed this cause. We've announced specific funding for programs with the mentally ill. We've increased funding in general to the provinces for health care, but the mentally ill are people who need to be looked after by society. And they often fall through the cracks, and you know, as a result, they end up into the justice system. And so I absolutely don't disagree with you. There's a lot more that we should be doing there. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. That's all the time we have for questions from the floor. I'm sorry. We're committed to wrap this up by 4 o'clock, and so we now come to the closing statements by the candidates. I'm going to go in reverse order from the opening statements, so I'll ask Jeremy to go first. 2 minutes.
All right. You've heard a lot of things this afternoon. You've heard me being sort of fairly trivial and sarcastic about some of the things. And I think this is one of the big problems with politics today. It's a dry, dusty, unfortunately mundane subject. And I think the reason for that is that we as people generally are not involved in it. The Canadian Action Party would like everybody to be involved and have their say in how our country runs. That is absolutely critical. If you have a say in how your country runs, then you become more interested. You come up with the ideas of what the people want. You, the people of Salt Spring, know what's best for you. We don't, well, maybe 2 of them do, but I don't. You do. And Gary Lung's in the same place that I am, although he's been around a lot longer. He's not local. You know what's best for you. You're the ones to tell me, if you send me back to Ottawa, what you want. Now, there has been a certain amount of talk going around about vote splitting. Okay, I'm going to address that very quickly, very simply. Right here, you have 2 parties that have been around forever, and they've really made a mess of things between them. And if you're happy to get further and further into that morass and a mess, then vote for it. If, on the other hand, you want what Obama euphemistically calls change, split your vote between the two of us.
Gary, can I ask you to go next?
Well, first I want to thank you all for coming and asking questions. I think this is an important part of democracy, making sure that we have all candidates meetings in all the islands and throughout the communities, and that we answer your questions. What you got from me tonight are absolute, truthful, straight answers. Some of them you may not like them, but you're getting the straight goods. You have a decision to make on October the 14th, and two very, very divergent views of where this country should go. Somebody who's imposing a platform with out-of-control spending, who announced in a few hours $70 billion of uncosted spending announcements that Mr. Dion announced. In his own platform, he's got $12 billion of uncosted promises. He said, we'll find them through efficiencies. Well, when they were in government, they went through the same program review and had a target of $11 billion, but found less than 10%. And when they asked John McCallum, who was a Liberal member of Parliament, he said, well, there is no more efficiencies. We've got all the low-hanging fruit. You need someone that's going to be honest with you. Will stand up, work hard, fight hard for your local constituents, and deliver results. You have steady leadership, proven results from myself and the Prime Minister. You have a member of Cabinet who's delivered on the environment. I ask you to look at the record of the Liberal Party when they were there. Bringing can stand up here and make all these, in her words, were aspirational goals. Well, they're aspirational. They had 13 years. We inherited an absolute mess from the previous government on the environment, and you don't have to take my word for it. I remember a lot of you here at previous all-candidates meetings, what you used to say about the Liberal Party. Well, it's the same people. The leader was in cabinet the entire time. So again, I would ask for your support on October the 14th, and I want to thank you all for coming.
I'll just remind everybody one more time that Mr. Kretschmer and Mr. Martin delivered a healthy, healthy surplus to the people of Canada, and it's been squandered in 2 years. I want to move on to something that is absolutely what I think are in the hearts of all Islanders and everybody in this riding, which is a desire for a plan that gives us joy to think about. A plan that's innovative, it's economically feasible, and it's going to mean something to the young of today, that we've got a way of financing a future that is innovative, that's creative, and it's going to tackle the world issues that are here, that are challenging us. Everything we've talked about, from poverty to war and conflict, is about our use of cheap energy, which has led us to all these problems that we're facing. So the only solution is to tackle the problem at the heart. We've got to tackle the issue of cheap energy and resolve it and diversify. And Mr. Dion has a plan, unlike Mr. Harper, who has no plan. So I say to you, October 14th, do you want to go with someone who's going to take the best ideas of Salt Spring to Ottawa, or do you want to go with Mr. Lunn, whose constituency is Central Canada and it's stuck in the bitumen of tar sands?
Well, thank you again for coming out and staying to the end of our All Candidates meeting on Salt Spring. My little card says, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And my campaign signs say, "Change the climate in Ottawa." And I have to say, knocking on the doors in the last few weeks, people do want change. An extraordinary thing has happened in the last few months. In the last election, it felt really dark. We were really, as a Green, felt really grasping to get our issues out there. In this election, people appear warm, they're open, and they're looking for change. And today we heard great questions challenging us. All the questions are essentially green. They're about how do we create a viable and sustainable economy, a viable and sustainable healthcare system, and be respectful to our natural environment and protect our social services. They're all green, they're about sustainability, they're about quality of life. Before I go much further though, there's one thing we haven't mentioned today, and that is the NDP don't have a candidate in this riding. And that's too bad, because no matter what you think of the person, he actually was able to offer some strong points, especially on electoral reform. There are people in this riding now who might have been inclined to vote NDP and now have no home. And that's too bad. But what it does do is those people who are inclined to vote NDP, please don't stay at home, because you actually have extraordinary power now in this election. NDP votes can affect the outcome of this election. And I hope that you'll take a close look at our platform. Please come and talk to me, because I think in this election we can elect a Green MP now, and we can bring some real change to Ottawa.
Well, that's it. Before you get up and start to move out, I would like to say thank you to Claire Schubert for doing the timing and doing a remarkable job. You've done a great job in keeping everybody on track. I really appreciate it. I'd like to thank the Driftwood who put this thing on and allowed us the opportunity to hear our candidates. I'd like to thank all of you for coming out and just participating in the democratic process. Without you, it doesn't work. But most of all, I'd like to thank these four people on my left who have put themselves up, come here, answer your questions, and it's not just here, you know that. You know there's 4 or 6 weeks of interminable answering questions and being nice to everybody. Why they want to do it, I have no idea. But we owe them a real thank you for coming.